Okay, so we recently just bought an entire shop worth of tools. Kind of a lot of unexpected work that I have, but I'm gonna do my best to make this educational for you. So if you're in the market for a used piece of equipment, hopefully this will help you know what to look for and how to go about getting it tuned up and dialed in so you can make it work for you. Okay, so first up is this 209HH helical head Powermatic planer. It's been in storage for about 5 years. There's a lot of rust on it. I haven't heard it run. This machine goes for about $5,900 brand new. It's not brand new by any means, but there is a 5-month lead time if you were wanting to purchase one of these. I scoured the internet looking for a used one and I can't find one. So the value of this is going to be pretty high right now. Let's run through this machine, let's get started, let's check the blades, the belts, make sure it's lubed up, let's get it put back together, we'll get the beds leveled out, and yeah, let's do it. We will put a link in the description for everything that we use to restore these tables and remove the rust. But really it's just a little WD-40, a Scotchbrite pad on an old sander, a couple of minutes of work, and these things were rust free. Now we're moving on to some mini standing blocks that were made for surfaces like this, removing rust on cast iron. And after that's done, I'm just going to put a little wax on here so everything moves nice and slick. Okay, so now we got most of the rust off the bed. We got them sanded with coarse, medium, and fine with these tiny little sanding blocks that are made for surfaces like this. And what I've discovered underneath the rust is that we have some scarring, marring. It looks like they might have ran a board through with nails in it or something. Okay, so now that we got the rust off of the tables, we're going to take off the cover here and we're going to check out the cutter heads.
Based on what I'm seeing right here, the discoloration, it looks like these blades have only been used on one side.
I might take them over to a flat diamond stone and just kiss them on there. So this comes with 10 replacement blades and none of them have been used. And I'm going through every one of these helical head cutter heads and not one of them has a nick or a dent in it.
Would you look at that?
It's pretty amazing.
Alright, so now we're using SAE 30 motor oil and we're gonna lube up the feed rollers. You'll see the oil start to come out right there. We're gonna use the same SAE 30 on the return rollers. And the same SAE 30 on the column here that's located under the boot. For the Acme rod inside of the column, we're going to grease that. This is just a lithium grease. Now we're going to remove the gearbox cover and check the tension on the chains. This one happened to be a little bit loose, so there's a tensioner right down here. You loosen that up, add tension, and then retighten. The deflection here should be about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. So if you change out the lower sprocket and you change out the chain, you can get 16 feet per minute on slow and 20 feet per minute on high. So if you're doing more precise, fine woodworking and you want to slow things down, then you might want to change out that sprocket, which we're going to very seriously consider doing. Now we're just going to lube up the drive chain here. We're going to check the table chain and see if it's tensioned properly. Actually, it looks pretty perfect, but if I needed to make an adjustment, this is where I would do it. We're going to pull this off here and we're going to grease up this worm gear. This should be greased monthly. We are making it easier than ever for you to help support this channel. Our showroom now has some retailed products that we love and we use on a daily basis. Next time you're in the market for Bridge City, Tormac, or even Buster and Punch, hit us up. It would help us while you're also helping yourself. Back to the video. Buildup of sawdust and other debris can cause your machine to plane inaccurately. Periodic cleaning is not only recommended but mandatory for accurate planing. Okay, so the planar system consists of 6 parts. Let's take a look. We have serrated anti-kickback system. So this prevents anything that's getting sucked in from being kicked back. It only lifts this way and then it will not let anything come back the other direction. Then you have a serrated infeed roller, which grabs your material and pulls it in. And then you have your chip breaker. Then you have your cutter head. And then you have your pressure bar. This prevents the piece from lifting after it runs through the cutter head. And then you have your outfeed roller, which is not serrated because you don't want any marring in the finished product. That's the way this works. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to check to make sure all of the specifications for the height that these things are supposed to be set at is correct. So this keeps all the wood chips down, which will then go into the dust port and then sucked out through your dust collector. We need to make sure that this chip deflector is 1/8 of an inch from the cutter head here and 1/8 of an inch from the cutter head here. So we're going to use feeler gauges. And we're going to put them in here and make sure that it's right about 1/8 of an inch, which that looks good. So no adjustment needed there. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. We're good there as well. So this doesn't need any adjustment. Now we're going to roll over to the chip breaker. So this is just a piece of wood that we had laying around that we're going to use to check to see if our specifications are set up correctly. So what I'm trying to do now is make sure I want the cutter head to just be touching the material. Okay, there it is. Now I'm going to back it off a little bit. So right there. So from here, this first one, I'm on the infeed side, is your chip breaker. That should be 0.1 millimeter of a gap. Let's check to see what we're at. It's perfect, exactly where we want it. That's pretty perfect. So no adjustment needed here on either the pressure bar or the chip breaker. I think we're ready to level the beds.
Okay, so now we got the beds on, the in feed and the out feed, and we got to level them. Now the way you do that might be intimidating, but it's actually pretty easy as long as you have a really nice straight edge. If you don't have one of these, you can joint a board if you have a reliable jointer and a pretty thick piece of wood. And then if you look underneath here, we have a 12 millimeter hex bolt. This is for tightening the bed once we have it where we want it. And we adjust these Allen heads in and out as needed. All right, we're getting really close now. So now it's just gonna be micro adjustments and I'm trying to get the straight edge.
Okay, now that the beds are level, I'm gonna mark a board, fire up the machine, send it through, and make sure that this thing is planing evenly. Just to make sure, I'm gonna take a caliper and I'm gonna check for 1.2850 on this side, flip it over, and 1.2850 on that side too. Victory. This is what it tastes like. I'm not selling this one, I'm keeping it, but I am selling my 15-inch. So if you're in the market, hit me up. I'm listing it in 2 days.